So, Colin, previous to COVID, how many times have you had interactions with the police?
None before COVID at all. No. Except I think I was picked up twice as for speeding and offences, but not for any criminal charges sort of thing. Yeah.
But you had some good interactions with him. You were saying in some country
yeah,
towns. Can
yeah,
you tell us
yeah.
about them?
Yeah. As I say, we played for and with and against a lot of the footballs, and in the boxing thing there with the young. I was actually coaching a little bloke. He was about that high, and Chocolate White he was called. He was blacker than that thing there, and but yeah, we had a good rapport and that sort of thing. But always had a good rapport with the police indeed. Yeah.
And now 6 years later, how many charges or how many times have you been to court?
There's about 8 or 9 charges here, and been to court probably a dozen times with remands and whatever else, and bail applications, 12, 14 times I suppose, yeah, at least, yeah. But only ever, there was one particular day, I was on 5 different charges, but I was only convicted of 2, the others were dismissed or discontinued.
Before we start on your great odyssey that you undertook, how long had it been then since you'd lost your wife?
18, just on 18 months, yeah.
So you've been 18 months as a widower?
Oh no, 20, actually it was 23 months, yes, yeah.
And how were you going through your grief? Were you still struggling with it?
Very much, and I still do to this day, yeah.
So you're struggling as a grieving widow, yeah. You never had any bad interaction with the police, and suddenly you're in, what was the car you were driving?
A little Mazda 3, 2003 Mazda 3, yeah.
And inside the car you got a hippie guy or some singer.
And ironical number plate, 1 box 361, yeah. And funnily enough, a couple of interviews that we done, people who were at Epic had said, I remember that, I always took notice of the number plate, yeah.
So the journey to Canberra is about 3,000 kilometres?
3,790.
So COVID's already here. The whole country is shutting down its borders, and for some reason there is a call from people all over Australia to come to Canberra, and you decide to answer that call and defy the government's borders, defy the mandates, and head to Canberra. Why did you decide to do that?
I think it originally, the idea came from the terrible way Canada was being handled, and the truckie blockades and what they were doing to the truckies. And then somewhere in the grapevine, I heard, they've got a convoy going from Melbourne to Canberra. And I thought, God, I'd love to go over to Melbourne to go in that thing there. I just want to be at Canberra. And then next day, somehow I think it was through Telegram and that, I found there was one going to be starting the next day, sort of thing, from Perth, and I quickly rushed down to get my little Mazda 3 ready and able to go over there, and with my mechanic mate, and once I got that going, we were on our way, sort of thing, yeah.
So it was that quick, one day?
Yeah. I thought about it on the Saturday. On the Sunday, I put a bit of effort in, and that's when I found out that there was a convoy going from Perth, and next day I went and got things organised. I was intentionally at first going to try and get a lift with someone. Thank God I did not. Be the worst bloody passenger in the world, I reckon. But that was my intention, because I didn't think my car would get going. But anyway, then I got onto my mate and I went out and told him, I've got a fuel tank that's leaking at the top. Can we get it fixed? Because he's certainly awake with us and that sort of thing. And yes, so we both together, we pulled the tank off and welded it up, and he said, this she'll get you anywhere you want to go. So we jumped in the car and off we went, sort of thing, yeah.
What goals did you have? What did you hope to achieve by going there?
Well, to be there was probably the main thing, to be involved in something which we thought, oh, there could be 200,000 or 300,000 people here. We thought at the time, and that, which of course we found out it was somewhere in the vicinity of 1.5 million people, and just to be there, and I had visions of overthrowing the government and that sort of thing. And if there's enough people there, let's overthrow these bastards. Even if we've got to physically overthrow them, I'll be in that too, you know. But yeah, so that was the main reason, yeah.
So there was revolution in your blood.
Revolutionary, yeah, for sure.
What was the trip like going there?
Well, we had a convoy of, when we left here, it was either 16 or 17 vehicles with around about, in the end, it ended up being 25 vehicles got there, but come at different stages of the game, and I think it was 61 people altogether with the 25 cars. But it started off, we had a bloke in like an old army truck affair. He was the leader and organiser and that, but it was very shambolic and that, and he didn't get up, he didn't even get past, what's it, where the water, up the hill. Mundaring, where he didn't get up past that. He thought he'd done the motoring, and then so it sort of got a little bit broken up, but he stayed there. We went on to the lakes and that sort of thing, and regathered there, and we headed off, and our first stop was Norseman that night.
When you're driving across the Nullarbor, because it's so empty and vast, had you driven across it before?
No, I hadn't driven it, but I was probably disappointed in it. I thought it'd be a lot barer than it was. But you know, it's supposed to be no trees and that. I counted millions of them.
There's only one part near the Nullarbor Roadhouse.
Yeah, sorry?
There's only near the Nullarbor Roadhouse that there's no trees.
No, they're just there, yeah. No, it's, yeah, but it was an enjoyable trip indeed, yeah.
Did anything happen on the trip? Any more breakdowns? Or what was it like having someone in the car, because the car's only small, that you'd never met before?
I'd met the bloke the night before, and if people know Nanup's notorious for people with 3 heads and that sort of thing, and every person has to have a guitar. So when he pulled up here, I'd never even spoken to him, only through texting and that sort of thing. And I said, "You got 2 heads or what, mate?" He said, I said, "I bet you got a guitar though." He said, "Oh, is it all right to take it?" I said, "Of course it's all right to take it." So Strummer was his nickname and that, yeah. Terrific bloke, but goodness gracious. He used to, like, no one smokes in the old car and that, but he was smoking stuff, but he mixes it with lawn clippings, I think it must be, because he goes a bit funny on it and that sort of thing. But he's half his frame's leaning out the bloody car, and that he'd go along having a fag and that sort of thing. And at one stage, on the second day, as I say earlier, I'm a terrible passenger, but I just like driving myself. And the second day I was absolutely buggered in that, and I said, "Drummer, can you take over for a couple of..." I said, "Now, only go 110 k's an hour, and no smoking." I said, because I sleep with one eye open and that. Anyway, I thought I just started to doze off, and I could feel he was going too fast. Looks over, 140. I said, "For Christ's sake!" Oh, I said, "Sorry, mate, sorry." Yeah, so started to doze off again, and next minute, for some reason, I opened my eyes, and we're going around a bend. Here's old Strummer in the little Mazda, passing the road train on the blood. Oh no, it wasn't a road train, I beg your pardon, just a semi-trailer. And I said, "What the fuck are you doing?" He said, "Oh," "there's no one coming." I said, "I know there's no one coming, but that truck can move over and put us out." I said, "Stop up the road, and I'll take over again." Poor devil never got to drive once again after that. I drove all the way from then on and that. But it was an eventful trip. But the third day, one of the interesting places we went. Carl and his partner, they had a big bus and they cooked all the food and that sort of thing. And he led the way, and he's an ex-policeman and that, and he knew all the shortcuts through there. But our next stop was going to be Mildura that night, and I don't know, might have been 150 k's before Mildura. We went through this town and that, and when we gathered we stopped before our scheduled stop up there, and shortly afterwards we were there, and this lady comes up in a ute, and I, being a very shy bloke I am, I said, "What are you doing, lady?" She said, "I've just heard you're going to Canberra. I want to join you." I said, "Where are you from?" And she said, "Oh, I own a shop about 100 k's or something down the road there." And when all these convoy vehicles went past, I said to the girls in the shop, "What's going on?" I said, "Oh, it's a big rally in Canberra tomorrow." And they said, "Shut the shop, girls, I'm off on my way." So, she jumped in. Her name was Carol, and oh God, she was interesting. And so when we stopped at Mildura, 37 k's before Mildura that night, she camped alongside of me, and ironically, I borrowed a pillow off her, sort of thing, and not for any other reason than I wanted to put my head down, sort of thing. And her name was Carol. And the next morning we were up at Sparrows, and she got up and somewhere, and she had a little dog with her. And shortly after, she said, "Oh God, I've locked the dog and the keys in the car," sort of thing. So we had to get a few. We sort of had a couple of little mates of mine that could have broken in, but anyway, eventually got it open and that sort of thing. But yeah, she was quite interesting. But to shut the shop that day and said, "Oh, we're going to Canberra," and that, yeah. Then we sort of got there and landed at Epic.
What was it like turning up at Epic? Because I was already in there then. But what was it like for you?
Unbelievable. But can
you describe it? Like, what's unbelievable?
Just the whole enormity of the crowd and that. We had to. I don't know where the information came from, but we were supposed to go right at I suppose it was the northern end of the Epic, and a road called Wells Station Road, and up at the very end there was a space for about 60 vehicles was supposedly kept for us. And anyway, when it was just so packed, they'd taken it all, and there. But just absolutely electrifying how so many, there wasn't a space to park a vehicle anywhere. We had to go right down the very back. But everyone to a man was away. It was just one of the best days or nights of my life indeed, and just mind-boggling and that, yeah. Yeah, it certainly was. Mm.
What was it like going on the march?
Well, the next day we went on the march. We got up there. We went to, I think it's Anzac Parade. I think right down where we all stood there, Government Hill and all that sort of thing. And we all gathered there. And I think I was showing you the pictures of the Anzac car that was there, led the way. Anyway, and of course, Colin gets sucked into most things, and there was a huge flag shown there. We carried this flag up there behind the white truck and that sort of thing, and yeah. And when I got up to Government House, as you probably know, there's lots of flagpoles there, and there's a bloody soldier or a copper or whatever he wants to call himself, as mute as ever. And so I went up and I said, "Boom!" And he jumped back, and then 2 or 3 other coppers from both sides comes and, "What's going on?" So I thought the bloke was asleep. I just had to wake him up. I said, "Anyway, just get out of my road, will you?" "Woof." So I've got to tie this thing up there, but I knew we couldn't. But anyway, they sent us down the road a bit further, and that's, yeah. So we ended up tying it up there. But yeah, it was so unbelievable, yeah.
Were you injured at all? A lot of people said they were injured there.
Not the
Sunburn.
first day, the second day I we were injured, mainly my lips and that, but I did see some terrible, terrible sights there that so many people, that was on the second day, the 12th.
What were some of the sights you saw?
Just, particularly a couple of old ladies, it looked like they'd had a blowtorch on both their legs, and just so red and scabby and that sort of thing. Oh, shocking and that. And lots of people with lips and that sort of thing burnt and that, yeah. I actually befriended a lady there, and we went into one of the police stations and reported it and that sort of thing, like a lot of other people did. I've still got the receipt from them where I reported and that sort of thing, but I never followed it up, or they never followed it up either, of course. Yeah.
How long did you stay in Canberra?
We got there on the 12th, and I actually left on the 26th. There was a rally on the 12th, the 19th and the 26th, and fortunately me mate Strummer and one of the others, Beth, they'd gone down to Swan Hill and missed that rally on the 26th. And I went left straight after the rally in Canberra. I went down to Swan Hill there because I was going to party on, there was a party on tomorrow sort of thing. And luckily as I did, because that was when that real stormy weather comes through, and it flooded so much and that sort of thing, and we could have got stuck there for a while. But so we only stopped there, and then when I got down there, Beth and Strummer had a blue and that sort of thing. And funnily enough, I was going out to where I was supposed to be, and then Beth had a very obvious pronounced car. She had a Australian flag draped over it, but it was not a flag, it was material, it was printed on that. And, you know, driving out there, and I thought, Christ, that looks like Beth's car sort of thing, you know. And I pulled in, and it was Beth's car. And anyway, so they did a blue. I said to Strummer, we're not going back to Canberra, I'm going home. I'm just sick of you and that sort of thing. And so we headed back back towards Perth, yeah.
What was it like leaving? I mean, you went there hoping to overthrow the government. Were you disappointed? Or what was the benefits or pitfalls of being there?
We sort of got around and saw a heck of a lot of stuff and that sort of thing. But I don't know how to say. Too many people were worried about who was a Freemason and who was a pedophile and all that sort of thing. And I thought it just took a lot of what we went over there for. We didn't want to know how look, I'm not belittling that side of things, but it's just, we went for a different cause, but people were worried, he's a Freemason, he's a pedophile, stuff what that is. We got there, and we went into Canberra a few times and that sort of thing, and challenged some things at the courthouse. We got kicked out of a couple of courthouses and that sort of thing, and yeah, but nothing really got achieved that I thought would have got achieved, you know. Yeah. So for that, I was a little bit disappointed in that aspect and that.
So that was with you as you were driving back? The drive back, that disappointment was in you on the drive back. Was the drive back harder than the drive there?
No, not really, but just the fact that it, you know, I got over that probably a bit, you know, but it still sticks in my guts that we didn't do what we did. But no, the drive back was still all right, you know. So, because I only come back to Border Village, yeah. And we got there on the 26th, 28th we got there.
Okay, you're at Border Village, which is a very remote part of Australia. This is the WA border. Now, you're WA born.
75 years.
75 years, you've had children here, you've got grandkids, and suddenly you're not allowed back into your state. How did that feel?
Well, firstly, when for so long, I'd like at 75 years of age, I'd slept in a tent or in a sleeping bag, a swag, I should say, swag and that sort of thing for all that time, and it was really getting to me sort of thing. And when I got to Border Village, that's right, there was a lovely lady, she was Sandra, she was from one of the rallies, but I didn't know her from before, and I only seen her twice in the interim sort of thing. When we stopped, I think at a place called Hay on the way over, her and David were having an argument about something. That was the only first time I thought, oh, who's this stupid woman and that sort of thing, but I didn't say it. And then walking up to the rally on the 19th, because I was a bit running and walking a bit faster, and she said, oh, hello. Yeah. She said, Sandra. Oh, I said, oh, hello, Sandra. How you going? So that's my knowledge of her. When I got to Border Town, she was there with her other two people on the vehicle, and she said, what are you going to do now? I said, see that over there? I'm going to find the softest bit of sand, and I'm going to stay and go to sleep in a comfortable bed for a while. She said, well, no, you're not. I've heard what you've done in Canberra and all that other stuff that you, and I've got you 2 nights accommodation here at the motel. I said, oh shit, Sandra. I said, I've got no money left. I'm broke. She said, don't worry about that. That's all. So I stayed on her for the 2 days, and it was wonderful. Yeah, and then in that 2 days, and after that, to repay me more, she gave me about $10,000 worth of work at a tattery and that sort of thing over the next 12 months, and that. So I'm forever grateful for Sandra. But anyway, when we were there, I met with Rod Cullerton, and we talked with Dave, the South Australian copper, and that, plus other ones there. There was a couple of them there that really didn't like Rod Cullerton, that sort of thing. But this Dave, he was a real decent fella, and during discussions and on the Tuesday, I think it was the 2nd of March, I think it was the 2nd of March, they were going to open them, this maggot was going to open the borders so you can go, and of course there was 200 or 300 vehicles there, and David, during discussions and that at the border, Dave said, oh, look, you've got to just use this G2G pass and that sort of thing, and then he said, just go through that and fill it in and do this, do that. So he said, and I said something to that, oh, no, we're not going to use the G2G pages on the online, we need hard copies and that. So he said, oh, go up and get it, come with me. And so we went up to the office there at the border, and I remember him said to the other cops, I said, that one's outdated. That one's outdated. Where's the latest one? They said, oh, we've got none left. He said, Colin, leave it to me. I'll go home and get it. I said, where's home? He said, oh, down at Eucla. So he said, I'll only be a couple of hours. And about 6 hours later, he turns up and we're at the bar and that sort of thing. And I said, geez, I wouldn't want to be hanging by the neck, wait for you 6 days. Oh, some idiot went out to sea and drowned and that sort of thing, so I had to go and look after that or something. But he was so good. He said, but look, do this, but don't go through tonight. Go about 6 in the morning. I'll be back by then, and it'll be all honky-dory. But the others involved, there was 16 other people in 10 vehicles altogether. We were going to go through and that, but they didn't trust the police. I said, well, look, he'll be all right and that sort of thing. Look, and for the sake of 4 hours anyway, I'm prepared to take that risk. But then in case, because we all know we're going to be in trouble. Mm-hmm. Oh, but we might. And I said, well, we'll be in trouble if we go. I said, we can dodge it for a couple of 4 hours, and why not do it and that sort of thing. So anyway, they decided to go through. So about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, we went through, and yeah.
And so the drive from Border Village to Norseman is about 900 k's. So
yeah, yeah.
But how were the cops with you at the border itself?
Well, the coppers weren't that sweet at all, didn't get an invite for dinner or anything like that from them. They were there and they said, you're not going through. I said, who's going to stop me, by the way? He said, we will. And of course, shortly after, as I was talking like that, there's a big security bloke. He towered over my vehicle. He could have turned it upside down, I reckon. He said, you're turning around, you're going down there, turn around. And I remember saying to him, I said, you're just like a boarding house cup of tea. You're very big, but you're very fucking weak, mate. And you can get stuffed and that sort of thing. I've lived over there for 75 years and I'm going there. And you and all these coppers here, I won't stop. I said, if you want to be brave, stand in front of it and I'll run over the top of you and all that. And anyway, we got going and yeah.
So they let you go?
Eh?
They let you go in the end?
They knew I was dinkum. I think they'd got an idea that I probably would have run over someone. And that, yeah.
So how many went through with you?
9 other vehicles, yeah, including...
So once you went through, the others just followed?
No, Max, in the COVID truck, they led the way, yeah. And then and I told others to go through because I'll let... And then I was the 4th or 5th one that went through and that sort of thing because the others were a bit frightened to go. So I said, just go through. I'll wait behind you and you know, like there won't be any drama and that. And they went through and that, yeah. But so that 9 or 10 vehicles went through altogether.
So
yeah.
on that 900-kilometre drive to Norseman,
yeah.
Was there any police bother you then?
No. Once we got going, that was it. And but it was a terrible rainy night and that we stopped 2 or 3 times down the track in the convoy and that sort of, except Max and Jeff had gone earlier on because they were thinking that we'd catch them up. And we couldn't do it. And then they said, oh, well, I think we'll stop here. I said, well, look, let's get going. You know, I wanted to stop back there, but you didn't want to. I said, let's go down. Oh, then they got down the road, no, we'll stop here then. I said, no, I'm going. So I headed off to Balladonia, and which I got to Balladonia.
For those who don't know, Balladonia is just a roadhouse.
Yeah, just a roadhouse, and it's a very important roadhouse because it's really in the middle of things. And anyhow, my old mate Strummer was there, and he'd started to pack the shits a bit, and he said, "Oh, I think we'll go with the other people who told me last night." I said, "No, Strummer," I said, "when we left Perth, we knew we'd probably get pulled up, and we're not taking off there. If we get pulled up, we get pulled up." So we headed off, and he cracked the shits for the first 100 k's or something. Didn't say a word and that. And anyway, when we got to Norseman, I think it was around about 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning, and ironically, where we'd camped the night of going over,
the other way.
they had these four cars and police cars and a big bus, and one of those big bloody like the old black Mariah Pommy vehicles and that there, and going down on the road there was a police car there and 4 them cones there alongside, and Rod Cullen said and of course I kept going through. I no need to stop. I committed no crimes, I didn't think. Anyway, I went out there and I get to the T-junction, turn right, and as I look back, there's all these cop cars chasing me, all these fucking lights flashing and carrying on. I thought I was
How
going
many cars do you think?
There was 4 cars and the big black Mariah car. But so they got there at the intersection. I had to turn right. So Rod said, "Do not get off the highway because then they can lumber you for something." I'd forget now. And so this big black Mariah pulled up alongside and parked right in front of me. Another cop there had come behind there. Another one there. So I could only catapult up there, sort of thing, if I wanted to get out. And Mrs. Hitler gets out of the car, and she's got a big, monstrous woman. She gets out, she's got all this gear on. She said, "Now don't move." I said, "Can you tell me how I can move first?" And then she said, "Why didn't you stop?" I said, "Because no one asked me to stop, and I'm genuine. No one asked me, so why should I stop in the middle of the road?" Anyways, see, then the driver got out, and he's got this big bag, and I said something like, "I hope you're not going to cut me up and put me in that bag, are you?" And that sort of thing. He said, no, and then he proceeded to get all the PPE shit out and put all this crap on to do that. And I said,
To do the what? To do the processing of it?
Just process, And anyway...
So they processed you on the side of the road?
No, they checked me all out and made sure things... And
what were they checking, like if you had COVID?
Look, I honestly can't remember what he done, but I know they put me in the paddy wagon and took me into the station, and that's where at Northman Station. And the sergeant there, I believe he was on our side as much as against him.
Have you ever been in a paddy wagon before?
No. It was eventful. Yeah, and poor old Strummer, he was panicking, that sort of thing. But when we got inside...
Can I ask, how were you feeling at that point? You're in a paddy wagon. As far as you're concerned, you've done nothing wrong.
Nothing wrong.
And now your state has got you in a paddy wagon. How were you feeling?
Well, I was mostly concerned. I said, "What about in the car?" I said, "Leave it here." I said, and of course, I thought I might be here for a week. What's going to happen with my car more than anything else? Wasn't worried what's going to happen to me and that, Anyway, we got there, and the sergeant, he was very, very good, and I reckon on our side, and we took all the fingerprints and all that sort of thing, and then I had to. He said, "Oh, you'll need to get a thing up your nose, what do you call it?
Rat test.
Rat test, yeah. I said, she better not put it up I said, "How can I get away with that doing it?" She said, he said, "Unfortunately, you can't, And I said, "Because I don't believe in this bullshit, and I said, I don't want to have that." I said, "That kills more people than anything else, and that, And he said, "Unfortunately, it's got to be done." And I told the nurses up there, and they were very, very gentle on that, because I threatened them, I think, and they got it. So he got that, and then we headed off about 7 o'clock.
So they let you go?
They let me go.
And they let you drive home?
Yeah. And I got home about 11 o'clock.
What were they asking you to do? What was the orders for you
of course, I had to go quarantine for 7 days and that sort of thing.
In your own house?
In my own house. And I said, "What about Strummer? Can he stop at my house tonight and go in the morning?" He said, "No, he's got to stop with you 7 days." I said, "Fucking hell." I said, I've been 20 odd days with him. I said, "I want to get rid of him tonight, but I don't want any more." He said, "That's unfortunate. He's got to stay with you for the full 7 days and that." Anyway, I rang Russell up and I had a big feed waiting for us when we got home. Yeah, about 10 o'clock I think I got home that night, yeah.
You're back in Perth. You've had this great odyssey, and now you're locked in your house. How are you feeling?
Just with this quarantine bullshit. In the interim, from when COVID first started, I wrote some terribly nice emails and that to the maggot, Dawson and McCoward and that sort of thing.
For those who don't know, who are those people?
The Premier of West Australia, Maggot I think he's Mark McCoward, I think. McCoward, what is it?
McGowan.
McCoward, I call him. And then Chris Dawson, he was the police minister at the time, who also became COVID commander and that sort of thing. And of course, I'd written all these bloody emails to both of them and that sort of thing, and told them what lying effing mongrel bastards the things they are and that sort of thing. And of course, for 2 days at Border Village, we had the biggest laughs about them and that sort of thing, what maggots. So when I had 7 days quarantine, the first day they come out here, and there's 3 cops in the car. And there's one cop walks up the steps, and because I went out to greet him, and I thought, and he kept back. He said, stay. I said, what's wrong? And he nearly went backwards down the steps. I wish he had done it. Anyway, he said, "You can't, it's COVID, got to stay." Oh, I said, "Don't give me that shit. Don't you understand it's all bullshit and all this and that?" He said, "No, and he said, "Just stop there." And he said, "We just want to check up that you're both all right." But both all right, I remember you saying that. And from now on, we'll just get out there and we'll just ring you each morning and that sort of thing and tell you. So next morning they came in, Tina did the horn there, and I know they waited, and I saw them out there and I thought, what the hell are they doing? Anyway, they eventually, no, I think I had to ring him and said, oh no, yeah, he rang me, that's right. And I said, why are you waiting? And he said, oh, we were trying to get in touch with Tracy. And at the time, I didn't know who Tracy was. And I said, why are you ringing Tracy? Aren't you supposed to be meeting? I said, isn't she here? I said, I don't fucking know Tracy and that. So what? Oh, he said, well, we thought she was there. I said, well, you know what Thought said, and I said, you know, there's only Strummer and I. Said, oh, by the way, Strummer, we went looking for Strummer in Nannup last night. I said, well, why? Oh, because that's where he lives. I said, well, don't you know he has to live here for the... And he said, oh, that's probably why the landlord was very unhappy, you know. So next day, the same thing, and I went up and said, you ringing or something? Oh, so he rang me. Oh, we still can't get Tracy and that. We're trying to, I don't know whether the same people or not come out, but 3 coppers in a car, would you? Anyway, they, same thing, Tracy were trying to, I said, for fuck's sake, yesterday was the same, you know. So the 4th day, I walked out there, I was waiting for him, and in my shorty pyjamas, I thought it was a bit overkill, but I went there and I was watering the roses, and watered one rose and watered another one. And I kept looking, I said, you bloke's going to ring me or something? And then just as the phone rang, big fat copper comes out. Go inside and put a mask on. I said, you go and get fucked wherever you want to go. And I said, don't tell me what to do on my property. You haven't got any warrant. You fucking big fat toad and that sort of blah, blah. I said, take your guns and your tasers off and come and make me do something, you big fat loose prick. And I just got abusive towards you, as you might have gathered. And anyway, Strummer yelled out, and I said, what's going on? What's going on? I said, so I come up here and I said, what's wrong? He said, oh, you'll get into big trouble. I said, no, fuck it. I said, they've got nothing on me. Why are they going to do that? And he said, oh, and then I thought, oh, discretion's a better part of valor, so I'll stop here. So when it's on the front veranda and sat there because the car had gone. And so I thought, oh, that's good. So I went outside again, and Mary, because the whole street, I think, from end to end knew the commotion was something about it, it's a police car and that sort of thing. So I went outside again, and Mary said, oh, where are you? Colin, they're parked down at the end of the cul-de-sac. And I said, oh, I'll go and sneak in there. And so I snuck back in here and I waited outside the front door again. 15 minutes, 3 people in a police car down there, on top of the 10 minutes they'd already been here probably, waited and waited for me to go there because they must have thought, oh, that stupid old bastard's not going to come out again soon. And so when he went past, I give him all the finger signs and get fucked and that's it. So then, go back a couple of days, Maggot Dawson was on TV, because I still watch TV. Maggot Dawson was on the TV there, and so now he's got all this data for this and all this data for that and all this. And so I wrote to him that night. I said, you show me all this data stuff here that you've got within 12 months, within 24 hours. I said, show me one bit of proof what you're lying about here, otherwise you can stick your quarantine up your ass and that sort of thing. So he didn't get back to me, and they said this was the 4th. And so I immediately, when they left, I immediately emailed him again. I said, you didn't do this, you've broken the contract with me, so stick your quarantine up your ass, I'm not going to do it anymore. And they never come back again after that.
Can I ask, in finishing this part though, did you get charged for crossing the border?
Oh yes, yeah.
And what was the fine, and did you pay?
Well, it's a bit of a complicated one too, of course. Rod told me what to say, and I used a bit of my own choice words and that sort of thing, and wrote a reply when they rang me up and charged me, and they said, "Oh, you have to come to Kalgoorlie." I said, "Well, there's no fucking hope of me going to Kalgoorlie, lady. If you want to charge me either on the phone thing there or in Perth. I'm not going to Kalgoorlie, so get that out of your head." And I want to charge it here. So she said, "I'll write a letter to us and tell us that." So I did, and I said that I'm going to sue every one of the police involved in the West Australian government and Chris Dawson, blah 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 blah. So that was, and I figured I've got it in that correspondence and that sort of thing there somewhere. And anyway, that's right. It was about the 16th of May that the magistrate rang me, and he said, "Oh, Colin Holly, William Holly, you're charged by the Western disobeying an order, disobeying a narrative, or disobeying something, direction." And so, how do you plead? I said, "Well, firstly, I wanted, like I've said on the, I want everyone to be charged with this and that sort of thing, and I'm going to defend it to the biggest ilk or whatever the word was." And I said, I want a remand or something for, and he said, "Oh, okay, thank you." He said, "But Colin, just sort of take it easy just plead guilty, and we can finish it all today." And by that, I really think that he would have said, "Colin, you've been fined $200, suspended or something." He just didn't want to go ahead, I felt. Anyway, so I said, "No, I found out, I wanted taken to court and that sort of thing." Oh, he said, and I said, "I wanted remand." And he said, "Oh," and because a few had been, Tracy had been, and someone else had been, and they'd got remand for a fortnight or something. And this is the 16th or the 11th of May. He said, "Oh, hang on, I'll remand you until," he must have been going through his calendar when he's going on holidays, 16th of November. I said, "November?" He said, "Yeah." He said, 16th of November. I said, "Oh, beautiful, that'll do me." So 6 months down the track sort of thing. And anyway, when about a fortnight before the 16th, the the chief prosecutor lady rang me up and she said, "Oh, Mr. Holly, we've decided to discontinue." I said, "What do you mean discontinue?" She said, "Oh, yeah." And I said, "But why?" She said, "Oh, because Section 25 of the Criminal Code, something means it's probably hard to prove that you've done anything wrong, etc." I said, "Oh, that's disappointing." I said, "I would have really even gone to Kalgoorlie if it means going to court." Oh, she said, no. Anyway, but you have to wait. You have to still be here to take the phone call from the magistrate. So magistrate, he rings me up on that day. "Oh, Colin, you've been charged with," "Yes." He said, "Yeah." "Oh, hang on." And then the Crown prosecutor bucked in, and she said the same thing that she'd sort of told me, and he said, "Did you hear that?" I said, "No." "What'd she say?" "Hear what?" She said, "Oh, they told me they're discontinuing that." So I said, "Well, but why? I wanted to go to court." No, well, it's not going to court. It's got to be done." So that was the discontinued. But as I'll tell you a bit later on, it was the start of the police and the government trying to get me at later, wherever they could do it later on in there, you know.
Okay, so once you were back, so pre-COVID, you didn't do protests, you had no thing with the police. Now you're kind of public enemy number one, and you've got off the charge of crossing the border, of entering the state, your own state, you know, even though the border was locked. And now you're here with the umbrella people, and you're copping all these charges. So you're of the belief now that the police were pissed off with you and they were vindictive. They were coming after you for anything.
I found that quite recently, actually, from the last 12 months, that it was a vindictive thing because McCoward and Dawson wanted me charged with something because how I beat them at the border crossing and that sort of thing. So I'm a member of the Umbrella Group, as we mentioned, and probably being the oldest bloke on it and with the most least to lose, and that I'm generally on the front foot of things and that. And anyway, it started with John and Kathy, who used to play the bugle every day, and that at the wall, the governor's house that we call the wall, each day whilst Governor Beazley was there, someone would talk, either John or Lee would talk to the governors, well, he never spoke to the governor, but to the intercom, and then one of us people would talk to him later on and that sort of thing, which was something, we got something off a chest. We had some terribly good speeches and speakers there every day sort of thing, particularly one you know so well, the paper man. Goodness. Rich, you interviewed, he sat here the other day. Oh, the big fella. Come on.
Max.
No.
Jerry.
Jerry
Jerry,
Roberts.
yeah.
Sorry, yeah. And he spoke so well so many different times. Anyway, when Governor Beazley left, that all got stopped and that sort of thing, and I don't know why. And of course the police wanted to move us down to what they call the kangaroos and that. And this particular day, the second day that Dawson had taken over, John and Kathy went to play music down the gate entrance, vehicle gate entrance there, and we were up there, and shortly afterwards there was huge commotion going on, and so I jogged down to see what was going on and that sort of thing, and they were trying to get Kathy. They had arrested Kathy and were trying to get her into a bloody paddy wagon, and there was about 6 or 7 coppers trying to get her into this paddy wagon, and of course I went there and I spoke a few words to Jesus and that sort of thing, and yapping on and told them and yelled and screamed and that, and of course I got arrested there the first time and that, and that was the first time I got fiddled by a copper, you know, doing the body search and that sort of thing. I said, I might do this tomorrow again. This is going all right. and that fucking maggot, I can still see him, and you know, smirking on his face. And then they sent me to the lockup that time, but I was out probably 3 or 4 hours later, and then.
What was that like being in the lockup?
Huh?
What was it like being in the lockup?
Well, I had a bench sort of thing that you either lay down or sit on and that sort of thing, and but the bloke in there didn't seem to be too bad, and then the next time I went in there, oh that's right. So I was remanded, but for a month or something that I could before I could come back, and I couldn't go to the wall and that sort of thing. And anyway, I went in there and I got it reduced somehow, and then the next time, yeah. So I got it reduced like for tomorrow, whatever that day was, 10th of October. See now that I remember, and of course, the same maggots that had picked me up there, they saw me marching up the street because I had got reminded that I wasn't to stop within 20 metres of the wall. So I didn't stop, I walked past and that sort of thing. And they're waiting, they nabbed me, got you, you're under arrest. I said, what the fuck, blah, blah, blah. Because I let them know. I said, well, you very rude words, Kelly, but very rude words said that, saying, you are just dumb as a fucking arsehole. Can't you see? I said, here's my thing. They said, no, you're still within 20. I said, no, but I did not stop. Did you see me stop? And anyway, next minute, he's on the police. He said, oh, we have to unarrest you because you are dead right. I said, of course I'm fucking right. I wouldn't be here otherwise. Blah, blah. And then a couple of weeks later, look, I can't remember, but the most serious, so probably the third or fourth one, I was coming across there, and the little green man, he was red at the time. I looked that way and I looked this way, and I thought, I'm not going to dent any cars if I walk across here now, so I'll walk across. And as I got there, Mr. Smarty ass that had arrested me not long before, I said, another arrest coming up for you. I said, and what for this time, arsehole? He said, because you jaywalk. I said, you can arrest me for jaywalk, please, because you are going to look the biggest fucking idiot policeman in the... I said, this goes all over the world when I put over, because at the time there was a bloke from Sweden was putting things up that you must have been sending or something, and I said, this will go all over the world, arrested and sent to jail for jaywalking. Oh, he said, well, I'll give you it was a
fine?
Australia Day. Gave me a move on notice and that sort of thing. So we had a party there that night, and then the next day, and poor old Paul Hilton, he met me there next day, and the same two that had arrested me the day before. I thought, and of course we discussed it at length. That be kind to the policeman, be nice, so we get to the. So I said to Paul, the coppers are coming riding down towards me. I said, I'm going to be nice today, so we're going to be nice. Good morning, Mr. Policeman. I hope you have a good day. He said, you're going to make us have a good day. I said, oh, funny boys today. What's going on there? And then they dropped their bikes, got off as though and they were arrested. And they said, funny boys, what's going on today? He said, you're 7 minutes early on your 24-hour move on notice. I said, oh, for fuck's sake. I said, look, I honestly, like being nice, I said, look, I honestly forgot. I'll go home and won't come back for an hour now. He said, no, you won't. You're going into the court. I said, no, you can't be serious. Look, I said, I've honestly forgotten all about it. Well, that's too bad, sort of thing. So they put me into the wagon after things, and poor old Paul, who passed away last week, he got abusive towards him and that sort of thing, and nearly got arrested. But anyhow, when I went down, went to the cop shop this time, the same sergeant, I think that this is the third time I'd been down there, he said, what the bloody hell's going on with them blokes up there? It's getting a bit overboard now and that sort of thing. And he said, look, Colin, I'll get you out as soon as I can. It's very, very busy. It's a Sunday morning, very busy. I'll get you out as soon as I can. Hopefully 3/4 of an hour you'll be out and that sort of thing. So about an hour and a half later, he comes back and he said, unfortunately, you're stopping the night tonight. I said, and why? He said, they've put another charge of stalking the governor's wife again on me. I said, I fucking haven't, I don't know if I've ever seen her. I might have seen her, but I don't know. I have no idea and that sort of thing. So anyway, so I had to stop the night there.
What was the night in the cell like?
Oh, shocking.
Why?
Well, I had a mattress about that thick, and there was a little yammergy bloke down that end, like not in the same bed, but one bed there, one at that, and this other bloke, he just never stopped snoring his boxer, and this poor little yammergy bloke, he couldn't do anything and that, and freezing cold, and I banged on the thing, tried to get another pillow, or a pillow, I mean. No, you're in a jail, not in a fucking hotel plaza or something, words of that. I said, you fucking assholes. And, yeah. Anyway, so I had to, and of course I had a pie, a pie or a wrap or something for lunch, dinner, and at breakfast I had like a McMuffin or something like that. That was it. Yeah, it certainly wasn't something you want to go to again. And that, yeah. So then, in the interim, I don't know whether Joe and Liz or someone had got in touch with Stephen Gabriel, the barrister fellow that was looking after us. Anyway, he came down in the morning and he went to court for me, and then so it got dismissed. But I've since found out why they were trying to get me is because when I went to Canberra and given the shits coming through the border, they've had been vindictive sort of thing and it was there was a Operation Palomino that we got freedom of information from. It didn't say on there, but that's what they were after Colin Holly and that sort of thing because he was a shit stirring prick or whatever.
So they actually went after you because you were pissing them off. You were basically not complying.
Not complying
and they wanted to punish you.
Exactly, yeah. Which I think any genuine bloke would do, you know.
Can I ask, ultimately, why did you do all this? What was it about what was happening that pissed you off so much that you took this route?
A couple of things, like I think I've told you before, but I would never go to a rally. I'd never been to a rally, and to see someone rallying that, and you know, like unions, that I said, you weak bastards, come out and do a day's work with me, and you know, like I can't stand that sort of thing. And then of course, when I come back after I'd broken the quarantine thing, there, Mary next door, she said, oh, I go to the umbrella, who's the umbrella, blah, blah, blah. So it started there. And of course, just what we talk about then, just how the government and these mandates shit and all that come around, we just want to say our piece in the sternest way we possibly can, you know? Yeah.
Do you regret it at all?
Not one bit. Do it all tomorrow if I had to. Yeah. Going, but the flowers are beautiful. They come out only one night. You know, ever heard of them? Green flowers? All gone. Oh, here's one here. Ah, beautiful. I think that's the last one, mate. Oh, this one here to go, yeah.